Prime Minister Modi's recent visits to two countries received widespread coverage by the global media. The two countries he visited were Russia and Austria. These visits were quite successful from India's point of view, and a lot happened at both places. We will discuss the Russia visit in detail in a separate video. In this video, we will analyze the Austria visit. Why was this visit historic? What is the history of India-Austria cooperation? How did India smartly send a message to both Russia and the West from a neutral ground like Austria? And how Pakistan's and China's wrongdoings were called out without taking names? We will discuss all this in this video. So, as we know, PM Modi visited Russia earlier, where he represented India in the 22nd India-Russia Annual Summit. After this, he visited Austria. This visit was historic because it had been 41 years since an Indian Prime Minister visited Austria. Before this, in 1983, the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had visited Austria. In this picture, she is being welcomed at Vienna airport. After a long gap, finally, an Indian PM visited Austria in 2024. The year 2024 is also special because it marks 75 years since the establishment of diplomatic relations between India and Austria. In 1949, diplomatic ties were established between the two countries. This recent visit will further strengthen the long-standing partnership between both countries. Prime Minister Modi reached Austria with a high-level delegation, which included Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and National Security Advisor Mr. Ajit Doval. There were discussions between India and Austria on the implications of the Russia-Ukraine war, such as how food and energy supplies are being affected in certain countries, inflation is rising, and the risk of the war spreading is increasing. Both countries have taken a balanced position regarding the Russia-Ukraine war and have maintained a neutral stance. They haven't cut off commercial ties with Russia, resisting Western pressure. Both countries continue to import energy from Russia. Both agree that Ukraine war should end as soon as possible. In 2022, Austria's Chancellor Nehammer was the first European leader to go to Russia and discuss with Putin the possibility of ending the war. India has also conveyed to Russia that this is not the time for war. In this visit, too, India sent a message to Russia from the neutral ground of Austria. Once again, India appealed to solve problems through dialogue and diplomacy instead of war. Western countries have been continuously questioning India's stance towards Russia, so this was India's message to the West as well. Whenever the issue of innocent lives arises, India will definitely raise its voice. Obviously, India keeps its strategic autonomy and national interests in mind, which is why it does not directly condemn Russia despite Western pressure. However, India never fails to highlight the human suffering and economic impact of the war. India is on the side of peace. India has given Buddha to the world and not youth. India's intention has always been to contribute to global well-being and prosperity like a Vishwabandhu. India and Austria are delicately balancing the Western and Eastern power blocks. Together, they can act as a bridge between the West and the East on the global stage. Please note that Austria is not a member of NATO. After World War II, Austria adopted a neutral policy. During the war, Austria was annexed by Nazi Germany. In the war, Germany, Italy, and Japan were the main Axis powers, fighting against the Allied powers, that is, the US, Britain, and the Soviet Union. The Allied powers defeated the Axis powers. After the war, the Allied powers occupied Austria. In 1955, the Austrian State Treaty was signed, ending Austria's occupation. Austria emerged as a sovereign and neutral state. In this treaty, neutrality was a condition for ending Austria's occupation by the Allied powers. In fact, the neutrality aspect is enshrined in the Constitution of Austria. It prohibits Austria from joining any military alliance and from allowing any foreign military base to be established on Austrian territory. That is why Austria is not a member of any military alliance like NATO. Austria maintained its neutral stance even during the Cold War. So now, after knowing the story of Austria's occupation, it is important to remember that in the past, India supported the cause of Austria's sovereignty. India was one of the few countries that supported the 1952 appeal in the United Nations General Assembly to end the Allied occupation of Austria. Austria has not yet forgotten this support from India for its independence and sovereignty. Austria mentioned this during this visit. Further, security concerns in the Indo-Pacific were also discussed during this visit. China's growing assertiveness in the region is a significant challenge. China was not called out directly, but there were talks about keeping the Indo-Pacific free and open, which was obviously a veiled reference to China. China's actions in the Indo-Pacific are well known, creating territorial disputes, making ridiculous claims by releasing absurd maps, bullying countries, military expansion, and exerting diplomatic pressure. The list is very long. So, by talking about keeping the Indo-Pacific free and open, a message was indirectly sent to China. A message was also sent to Pakistan along with China on the issue of terrorism. Even here, they were not directly named. Important issues like cross-border terrorism and cyber terrorism were raised. Concerns about increasing terrorist activities and attacks were discussed. Of course, Pakistan was being referred to here. Everyone knows how Pakistan supports militant groups and provides them with training and funding, and how China saves terrorists linked to Pakistan by misusing its veto power in the United Nations. This prevents global threats like terrorism from being addressed in a fair and impartial manner. And that is where India and Austria find another front for cooperation. Both countries agree that international institutions need to be reformed and made more effective. Let us take the United Nations as an example. Everyone knows that UN reforms are long overdue. In fact, let me tell you an interesting thing. In 2011, the then President of India, Pratibha Patil, visited Austria. During her visit, Austria supported India's bid for a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council. Currently, as we know, there are 5 permanent members in the UNSC called the P5: the US, UK, France, Russia, and China. Austria supports the inclusion of India too in the UNSC, which makes sense. The country with the largest population in the world and an important player in present-day global geopolitics definitely deserves a permanent seat in the UNSC. India has been saying for a long time that the United Nations is becoming obsolete and is far away from the rapidly changing realities of the world. Support from countries like Austria further strengthens India's bid. India is a very diverse country. There are numerous religions, languages, traditions, and cultures here. It is known for its pluralistic society. Similarly, due to various historical and geographical factors, a multicultural and multilingual society developed in Austria too. Both countries celebrate diversity. They uphold democratic principles and respect values such as liberty, equality, freedom, and the rule of law. The population of Austria is approximately 9 million. For perspective, let me tell you, area-wise, Austria is 1.5 times bigger than the Indian state of Uttarakhand. But in Austria, there are only 9 million people, whereas in Uttarakhand, there are more than 10 million people. This will give you a rough idea. If we talk about the Indian community in Austria, almost 30,000 to 35,000 Indians are currently living in Austria. These people are engaged in various sectors like business, education, IT, healthcare, and academics. India and Austria want to deepen their relationship and upgrade their bilateral partnership. Both countries realize that their economic ties are far below their potential and there is still much room for improvement. That is why both countries want to expand their cooperation in various sectors such as infrastructure, AI, renewable energy, fintech, and e-commerce. Talks are ongoing between India and the European Union regarding a free trade agreement. Austria, being a member of the EU, will also benefit from the deepening of ties between India and the European Union. New trade and investment opportunities will be available, and new avenues of growth will be created. Like many countries in Europe, Austria faces a significant shortage of skilled workers. This issue can be addressed through the labor migration deal with India. A migration and mobility agreement was signed between India and Austria in 2023. This will make legal labor migration easier between the two countries, expedite visa processing, and improve exchanges among students. India is working together with countries like the US, Japan, and Australia to make supply chains more resilient. Many transport and connectivity corridors are being developed, generating new opportunities and increasing access to crucial resources like rare earths, metals, and pharmaceutical products. As a result, sectors like energy transition, digitalization, and healthcare will be boosted. One example is the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, which will improve India's connectivity with the Middle East and Europe. We have talked about this many times. Austria is very much interested in engaging with this connectivity project. Look at the location of Austria. It is almost in the center of Europe and shares its borders with Italy and Germany. So, Austria joining the project will further improve connectivity. The biggest problem we are facing today is climate change. There isn't as much discussion as there should be regarding environmental protection. It is true that as the fastest growing major economy in the world, India is experiencing several opportunities. India is a major hub for startups globally. The large young population drives innovation and entrepreneurship in the country, which also means positive demographics from an economic point of view. All of this is fine. However, it is also true that population growth directly contributes to climate change. Therefore, as the most populous country in the world, India must take significant steps to address climate change. Efforts are being made towards achieving climate neutrality. India is investing in green hydrogen and solar energy. We can utilize Austria's support in expanding renewable energy. We can benefit from the technological expertise of Austrian companies in the clean and green energy sector. Additionally, India has invited Austria to join the International Solar Alliance. Considering that India is highly vulnerable to climate change, focusing on green growth is absolutely necessary for us. So to sum up, PM Modi's visit to Austria will further strengthen bilateral relations between the two countries. Through close cooperation, new economic and technological opportunities will open up, proving to be a win-win for both.